Can we get the projector running? Can somebody get our projector running? All right, so
another feature is
let's see how we proceed. Today we're still continuing with our counseling psychology, and I know that we let's see that is.
Then multiple individuals are able to access that.
I think we have looked at quite a number of these things, and in a couple of weeks we should be looking at our right. So last time I think we looked at we stopped at psychotherapy. Is that true?
Anyone who
I know we looked very, very closely at the principles in counseling, all sorts of things, right? And as usual, my style is that sometimes I bring some of these small things during an examination so that I am able to understand your thinking and your level of knowledge on certain issues that we talk about every day around.
okay, or you can publish certain content.
That's why this one comes here, I think, is it? Yeah. So what is the issue? Your camera cannot work now, eh? Yep. Okay. So here we shall be looking at some of these, and as I said, mentioned earlier on, I'm good at this. What's the matter? Or what's the problem? Brice, what's the problem?
Those things also promote collaboration.
I thought it was you who is the problem. It is that our head of wisdom. So this is how I think we looked at this very, very easily, because we also looked at this when we were looking at our casework. And as we proceed, you see how issues of casework, issues of what do you call dysfunctionality came in as we proceed to look at what counseling psychology is, and also what psychotherapy is all about, and there are differences around. We looked at issues of permissiveness and what it entails, and also I think we looked at what it is as something which really requires quite a lot of moral principles for you to be able to transact and do a good job. And some of those are the ethical recommendations that you require. And as I said earlier on, all these things really are bordered on casework. Why do you think they are bordered on casework or group work or whatever it is? Anybody with an answer? Why do you think we say these are bordered on casework or they are bordered on? Can somebody tell me why? Can somebody tell me why before I decide to maybe come around and maybe you can answer later, not now, right? Yes, I think so. Let's have it answered later. Eric, why do you think, as we look at counseling psychology, we seem to be going backwards to what we have covered? somewhere, somehow. But why is counseling psychology? If we're going back and we're looking at the principles, those principles were actually also casework principles, right? Why? That's the question. I want somebody to answer.
I think it's because they all deal with an individual. It's all to solve the person, to restore the person's functionality.
That's a very, very good attempt. Very, very good attempt. Counseling psychology is the one field of psychology, right? Which deals with an individual's mental health issues, the mind, the thoughts, the thought processes, and how individual can realize the self-awareness of that particular individual. How an individual can realize the actual assertiveness to be able to manage his or her own life, right? That's what it is. And in social work, it's all about helping an individual with a problem, right? And how do we do it? We use this is what I wanted. Right, this is what I wanted. We use methods, right? And we have so many of these methods, too many of them. We use primary methods. How many do we have primary methods? Anybody? You know them, but you have forgotten. So can you remember? Boston. Gilbert is missing. Huh? What? You're talking to yourself. So ukaikira bwanji? Akusira? Tiene nazo, malizane. Okay. So we find that actually in counseling psychology, we still go back to our methods. That's why some of the principles are the same. So in casework, we have those principles in our casework relationship, right? We looked at those things. We looked at casework principles and so forth and so forth. So that's why we go back to these ones here. Now, do you think counseling psychology has anywhere where we use secondary methods? Anybody with an answer? Do you think in counseling psychology there's somewhere where we need the application of secondary methods? Anybody? You remember it better one day. It's both a science and an art. Why? I'll not answer for you. And in counseling psychology, yes, we use secondary methods simply because counseling psychology as a science relies heavily on evidence, right? How do you know that somebody has a mental problem? There must be evidence, right? Yes. So how you understand an individual's mental health, how you understand an individual's thought processes, how you understand how an individual can be affected by negative thoughts, that helps you to understand that particular individual, and there it becomes a science because you require evidence and also you need the facts to prove your assertion about an individual's condition or an individual's functionality, as Eric put it to us. I think I'm being very clear, right? Okay. Boston, don't come next time and say, Anachura doesn't right? Be careful. Please, okay. So let's proceed. So now we looked at these other issues where we are looking at issues of autonomy and some of the real actual principles that we believe in. I mean, rather, we operate by in counseling psychology and also in social work. We mentioned about this one here, which I think you are all aware of what it is. I did mention last time. That is just how you are committed to promoting the interests of your service user, right? But it's not only that, it's also both ways. How do you promote the interests of your service user? And you find that it still goes back to how you create the autonomy in your relationship so that your service user can actually be able to vocalize or verbalize and something like that. So let's proceed. Please, these three terms here, right? And many more that we're going to come across are critical in your understanding your counseling psychology. It's about your self-awareness. What is self-awareness, for example? Understanding?
Understanding oneself's strength.
Okay. Understanding yourself, strengths and weaknesses. Okay. How would you do that? How do you identify your strengths and weaknesses? You are a human being, right? Like all human beings. A simple example. Have you ever thought about yourself as being inferior to somebody?
Yeah.
Excuse me? Have you ever at one point felt that you are inferior to somebody? You said, yeah. How? And why? How and why?
Okay, this to take an example, in football, there are some players who are good than you. So once you want to compare yourself with them, you feel like no one cannot reach their level, and you feel inferior.
And also here too, we can find there's some students who are more doing than the others in terms of the capacity of school fees, the capacity of food and everything. And then you feel free, those people want those things.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good example which is going to really make us understand what it means. Have we always mentioned that when we're dealing with a service user, right? You must recognize the uniqueness of that service user. Well, mentioned this. Now, does the uniqueness of a service user translate into inferiority?
Yes.
Serious?
Yes.
How do you mean? How? The uniqueness of your service user, does it make that individual unworthy of a person? That's what you're telling me.
Yes, sir.
No, Isabel has something to tell us. Tell us. That's what you're trying to tell me. Let's assume Tao has no school fees or has not eaten this morning because she has no money. Right? Does that make her inferior to yourself because you have your breakfast?
No.
Now, in counseling psychology, we talk about the uniqueness characteristics of an individual, right? Which are unique to that particular individual. And in those unique characteristics, there are also strengths in that particular individual. Don't you think so? There are also strengths in that particular individual. I always gave you an example of two people. I still remember them. I was in the village and I didn't meet one, I met only the other one. One who always wanted an exam. When teachers say, teacher, sir, kwa mchedwe sama yeso tulembalit. Right? But every time he writes, he fails. The next time he will just say, sir, my yeso mchedwe sir. But he never knew that he was going to fail. That type of drive in that particular individual is quite phenomenal to himself, right? In other words, he had his self-awareness, the courage in himself that I think he can do it. And he fails, but still believes that he can do it. All right. How different is he from somebody who doesn't know Temayeso, writes, or what's Temayeso, writes and fails, or he passes? The two characters are different in terms of the strength in an individual, right? How aware, how strong that individual is, what we call how that individual is able to manage his emotions. Even in the face of failure, he's still very strong. Still asking, sir, instead of saying, and the teacher will just laugh, or to come per salem, but it's going to fail, right? Yes. But he still wants that. That is something which is unique to that particular individual in his mind, in his brain, right? The courage. You have heard about what people call Dutch courage. Eh? What is Dutch courage? Eric? Don't know Dutch courage.
Dutch courage?
Yes. What is Dutch courage?
Something loyal.
Huh?
Thinking about loyal.
No. Dutch courage refers to actions that sometimes people do because they're inebriated. What to be inebriated? To be influenced by intoxication. Right? There are people who would do that so that they can do certain things that they cannot do when they are sober or their mind is too clear. That is called Dutch courage. I remember those guys who had some of these ideas when we were young in college. They would be admiring a lady for a long time, but they cannot approach because there are so many factors around. In college, not these colleges, our old colleges, where you meet, you mix, everything's provided for. All of you have everything equal. Your breakfast, your meals, your surface, accommodation, and everything is provided for free. Right? So the only difference is who has the money, who has not, whatever it is. Unfortunately, there were no cell phones those days. Yeah. So those who were better off in status would be better off. In other words, ladies would not go for somebody who can't even afford a pair of shoes. Of course, we had been given some allowances. So to approach those type of ladies, people would go and get a small drink. So there was the courage now. That's what we call the Dutch courage. Right? So you have Dutch courage. Because that's when you can talk without worrying about what's going to happen to you. The only problem is that in the following morning we feel very shy when you say, Isabella, you're laughing. Yeah, so all these things are mind issues, right? So in other words, a normal person should be able to act according to what he wants to do, and if that which he wants to do is in the best interest of himself and is good in the eyes of the rest and the community. This is how these things go around. Okay. Now we looked at psychotherapy. We shall focus on this a bit today, simply because it's one of those issues that as a social worker, you are going to get it over and over again. Everybody will talk about psychotherapy, psychosocial this, all sorts of things. What are these things about? What are these terms? What do they mean? Are they practices? Are they approaches? Are they interventions? Or what are they? Right, so here, psychotherapy is actually an approach or an intervention where I try to address issues of individual disorders in the minds of those people. It is about how an individual manages his thinking, about how an individual manages his activities, his behaviors. We shall see as we proceed. We shall look at you look at this in the context of the environment, something which I've always been mentioning around here. So you find that when we talk about psychotherapy, it's about how you actually deal with your service user through a managed talk over issues. Now, you cannot talk about an issue that you don't understand, for example, right? If somebody comes to you and has a family problem, right? Continuous fights in the home, continuous abuses of different nature and kind and something, and comes to you and is a gentleman, right? Bwana, ndafika ndindi mavuto kwambiri anambe sakunditandiza, right? Amangu kala kundimana chakudya sio njoti limalepera kugona usiku kundilalatira usiku wose, things like those. Is this a problem? Is this a problem? Somebody has come to your office and it becomes your service user immediately with this type of problem. Anaembewa mandimana chakuja. Usiku manditaratira usiku wose. And all sorts of things. Ndikazuka nimakasi nagone ndatopa. Nimalepera kagwira ntchito chifukwa ndo makanditatopa. Yena bwera chifuna chitandizo. This is a pure case study. Tabitha, where do we start from? I've come to you, you are my social worker. Actually, you are my counselor, not a social worker. I've come to you because you are my counselor with this problem. Where do we start from? Not only Tabitha, everybody, anyone who can take us through. Where do we start from? Isabella, you are my counselor and I've come to you with this problem. First things first, what comes to your mind? Okay, that's stage number 2. Stage number 2. I want stage number 1. Okay. Stage number 1 is to convince yourself whether or not that situation is a problem. Right? That's first thing. Why do I say a problem? Tongue. Why do I call it a problem? Brice, why do I call this a problem? Yes. Yes, it is. Any problem creates that situation of dysfunctionality. But why do I call it a problem? Because the individual thinks it is a problem. So because the individual thinks it is a problem, then it deserves your attention as a counselor or social worker. She told us that stage number 1 or step number 1 is to identify the problem, right? But what she did not go further to tell us, which you all know, that's why I'm asking you, why is it a problem? Very simple answer. It's an individual thing, one individual affected, right? That's why it is a problem, not a social problem. At that point, it has not reached that level where it can become a social problem. It is a problem because it is singular, affecting one individual. That's the first thing. Now, what Tabitha told us tells us now to go down into what? From that story. Into what? You guys forget too fast. Well, serious. You have identified an issue and you think it is a problem. So how do you proceed from there? Yes, you moved out to what we called what? Eric, don't you remember this? Even in counseling, generalized counseling psychology, you still go down through those processes around identification, of a problem. These are the steps. Case analysis. Number 3, then you go to your case analysis, then you go to issue of diagnosis. Now you're trying to look at it. What is it? You have broken this thing into small parts. That's what we say. In case analysis, you break your situation into parts, different parts. Because now you are breaking these things into parts here is going to help you with your diagnosis here. That's what it means. Right? Ndabwera ineyo nambewe amango ndi mana chakudya amango ndi ratira usuko sindigona amango tana and so forth. Yes, it's a situation which is premised on dysfunctionality of the family, right? As you put, the function of the family have been disabled because the man cannot operate normally to go to work and come back because of the situation in the home. Let him break down to really understand what is the problem. Tabitha, how do you now identify the problem before you start to do your analysis? here it becomes a bit complex. In your case analysis, what do you do? I said you break the case into pieces, right? Equal pieces, so that you analyze each one of those case issues. Why? We are looking at causal factors, right? This is what you will be doing. So in between these two, 1 and 2, you're actually looking at what we call causal factors. So whether it is in counseling psychology, which is general psychology, whether it is in guidance a bit, put it aside. But in counseling psychology, general psychology, and psychotherapy, which is part of that, you also look for causal factors. What could be the cause of the behavior now? Number words, actions are behavioral in nature, right? No, yes.
Yes.
Number words, actions are behavioral in nature. And if they're behavioral in nature, they are by implication what? Mental issues, right? The mind, the awareness of Nambewe's mental situation. Is she normal or not? Right? Those are questions that will be coming to your mind. What are the causal factors? Why should she be behaving like that? That's what a social worker would do. That's what a psychotherapist would actually do. What is the cause of that? Right? The difference between your normal casework dealings with the psychotherapy, the psychotherapy goes much deeper and dissects an individual. You'll actually be looking at the individual as that individual is, but inside the brain of that particular individual. What is it in that particular individual's mind and the brain and the functioning of his mental capacities, right? That's what psychotherapy is all about. Right, so somebody, a counselor and psychotherapist, but they are not. These are different levels. So a psychotherapist is much more interested in those 3 things I've always mentioned. We shall get through those. Those 3 things: your environment, your behavior, your mind, and your thought processes. These are what a psychotherapist will be looking at. So I would be looking at the number from that angle. Now the question is, where do you start from? That's it, practical. Your social workers are going to go out and psychotherapy, social chan. You need to understand these things deeper, much deeper than what you're supposed to do. How do you understand the number and his behavior? Whatever it is. Now, in your case analysis here, you are helping myself to manage the situation in my home because of Nambewe's behavior. See your chat? You have to understand Nambewe's mind. So your focus will not be on me as a complainant, but it will be the cause of my complaint, right? The cause of my complaint is the behavior of Nambewe. See your chat? So let's look at the behavior of Nambewe. Is it? So here, you would go deeper to understand the background of Nambewe. You must go understand Nambewe. Why is Nambewe behaving that way? You ask him, man says, yes, I'm not going to Ndikalandila, Ndalama yosema kampasa Nambewe ishi. Kwa within 2 days, alindiwa palibe, chani, emas, chani, palibe. All sorts of things like those, right? So these are the things that will help you to understand Nambewe's behavior. Is it a PTSD, for example? What is a PTSD? Is it possible that Nambewe was traumatized, was abused as she was growing up, for example? That she grew up in an abusive home and she thinks abusive behavior is the perfect behavior for a wife and a husband. It can become part of, what do you call it? Fixation? Right. Right. I was grown up in that environment where fighting between the mother and the father is normal. Children just take that as normal and they'll start practicing. Yes. PTSD can kill. PTSD kills. PTSD sends people into suicide. That's what it does. PTSD is harmful to an individual. It kills your thinking, it kills your personality, it kills everything out of you. You hate everything, right? And that's why when we are dealing with people under this, we go a little deep. First things first, we tell, look, it's between yourself and myself, right? This is how it started. It's between you and myself. The information you give me here, we use our principles, confidentiality. Even if somebody brings a gun, wants to shoot me, because I can't divulge your information to him, he would rather kill me, because I'm under oath to do that. So that one should be able to give you everything. It takes time. It's not a one-day job. It takes 3, 4, 5 days to diverge out. Now, as a social worker or a trained therapist, that's why I say therapy is a use a talk approach, right? Do you know how you use a talk approach? Yeah. Anybody? It's not just put there for nothing. Why do we use it? And I said, when we use this approach, it's not a one-day issue. That probably can take you weeks, can take you months. The minimum you can deal with somebody with a problem which requires psychotherapy is probably 2 months, 8 weeks or so, 7 weeks, whatever it is, something like that. But why talk therapy? For example, why would we use talk therapy? Talk therapy is a technique where you tend to build that bonding. You remember in our case work relationship, right? The trust, the acceptance, right? The more you talk, the more you open up, right? And the more you open up, the more you go back to get to the roots of your history. That's what it means. So 1, 2, 3 days talking about, you should be able as a counselor or a psychotherapist to understand the problem of that individual. And if you are trained, which you are being trained now, but of course you're going to practice after this until you do further training. You have to look at issues of his emotional being, his mental capacities and something like that. And because it is talk approach, what do you think you use if it is about talk? What do you use? Isabella. What do you use? It is talk approach.
Listen.
Yes. So number one, that's we talk about issues of active listening. You will have to do that. You have to, communication is very broad, right? One of the elements within communication skills is the active listening, right? And thinking, yes, you have to. So that every word that individual pronounces, in all that talk, you pick out keywords that the individual is using. See you? Hii koma ndipo ine koma moyo wanga woso ndipo kaziganiriza so now you pick that one koma ineso moyo wanga so ndikaniganiriza so okay, quickly think, what is it? Akauganizira ndichane. So your keyword is nikauganizira. There's something there. See you? Yeah. So don't go straight ukauganizira chachana. Forget about it, but it's behind your mind. You continue, and in the end you say, could you? Chiripo china chachi china kuchitikira mwina. Komaso nikaganiza manta mandigwira banje. Banje. Ali bambo wapeza aja ndizo za kwambiri. Now you are picking all those things around, right? So before on that trail of words, anakuzunza bwanya makuzunza bwanya. Sema kupasa fees chani. Fees ndipo ndalama silima soa oropangono, right? You follow that, eh? Ndalama silima soa oropangono ya. Sikuwa nandika yaku boarding yabu chana and so forth, something like that. And you are following that trail and it becomes very interesting that you are building on that. Bambo mpeza amamvutisa kwambiri. Ndalama mampasa dele sukuru yabu Okay. So kuganira chiwe chimamo pya ndichana. And you go on. In the end you find that amandipanga zakuti abora. See you just? Then you start from there. The PTSD now comes in. This one is traumatized, right? And stressed up. That is a disorder. How do you deal with that one? Then you come down to these things around it. Oh, all right. Let me not go deep like you are being trained to practice. You are not. You are being trained to work, I think. I hope so. But you can practice in the end. Here is how you build your close relationship, as I mentioned, just like in casework. Because I mentioned, but it is one-on-one. As long as it is one-on-one, then you are still doing casework. So this is what it will be. So there will be something like that, which is you are trying to build your relationship between yourself as a provider and a user. And here you are looking now, we are moving now to our stage down there. Look at that. We moved from the identification, analysis, diagnosis. Then we're moving down. Right. Now, once you get to that area of analysis, whatever it is, it means in our illustration on casework, you'd have gone from your number one, you're moving to number two, and something like that. So there you'll be doing dealing with your number two, which is actually the actual diagnosis. Diagnosis, you'd have broken down the case into pieces, and you're now looking at the causal factors, and that is what generates what you call assessment, right? So you still, even in counseling psychology, you'll still be going through those things, assessment and things like those. Anyway, so some of the goals that we have when it comes to issues of psychotherapy are issues of behavior. Sometimes we find people in situations that have been created by their own behavior. How that individual's behavior translates into actions, right? At one particular time or the other. This is how it would be looked at. And also, you are looking at the issues of how you can just try to improve an individual's growth. How does an individual improve his self-awareness? You can see issues of self-awareness are still coming on over and over again. And it takes us back to the question which I posed earlier on. Can an individual feel inferior? You can feel inferior if you compare yourself to somebody else, right? In a different field of operation or whatever it is, something like that. It's very easy, right? Yes. If you compare myself, I compare myself to what? A musician. I would feel real. I don't know whether I like music, but can I sing? That's the question. I can't even sing in church, so it means in that field I'll be inferior. But if that guy was to compare himself to myself on certain issues, talking, he may not talk, right? Or analyzing things, he may not be able to analyze certain things. Things that he thinks is normal, they would be abnormal to me, the way I look at them. So, inferiority is individual based on how you look at it, right? But then, this approach is about addressing your feelings of inferiority by building your self-awareness, by being able to build your capacities for self-esteem, something like that. Reliance on yourself, believing in yourself, that what you do is the best thing for yourself, something like that, right? Do you think it is easy to challenge, for example, it's possible? Right, that's possible. Think so? Yes, it is. Yes, but that challenge must be supported by something else. What? The will to, and also the work which must be put into that. The preparation and all sorts of things. And that is your self-awareness, the strengths that you have about yourself, and the resolve, right? How you resolve to achieve what you want to do. All those things build built around your understanding the self-awareness. And also self-esteem. Boston, what is self-esteem? No, Gilbert. Are you okay this time around? No, you're not. Eh? What? You're confused? Huh? No, I said, are you okay today? That's what I said. Okay, good. So that answers my question. Right? Talk to me. All right. So self-esteem is your ability to realize your own potential and believe in that type of potential that you're going to. Right. By the way, I sent somebody to collect my registration age.
Yeah, most things one it's not yet photocopy.
Okay. And issues of resilience and coping skills. What is resilience? Huh? No, Isabel says kupiri, right? Bruce says what? Huh? Oh, resilience. Eh? That's a serious one now. So coping skills is your ability, right? To be able to do what you want to do with whatever you know. And also how you improve your social relationships around. So find that this type of therapy is also focusing on issues of social relationships. Those are issues I mentioned about the ecology down there, right? How is it? I think we have talked previously about issues of uh, social capital, right? Yes, how does it actually help us to do that? So that is it. Let's look at some of the objectives which are much, very, very close to the goals itself, because they go side by side. We talked about individual maladjusted behavior. Now your objective will be to change that disturbed pattern of behavior in an individual. That's an answer to that goal, bullet number 1. Maladjusted behavior is only about you. How do you change that type of maladjusted behavior? And also, you must understand and be able to define what maladjusted behavior or patterns of behavior are. And from there, then in your therapy processes, you would be designing methods or systems through which you can.
Did you say the mark behavior?
Maladjusted behavior here, right? Or maladaptive, adjusted or maladaptive behavior. You see that one, right? Yes. This one, adaptive behaviors are behaviors which follow what is normal and generally accepted, right? Mal will be something which is against those things. So maladjusted behavior here sometimes, right? Could be in the children, what do you call delinquency? You ever heard about delinquency, right? What is it? Eric, what's delinquency?
Delinquency is doing the things without knowing.
No,
It's bad.
not without knowing. Okay, it could be without knowing, or it could be deliberate. Okay, let me take it that way. It could be deliberate or without knowing, but delinquency is actually a maladaptive behavior, right? Behavior which is contrary to what is seen as normal in that particular society or community. So when we talk about juvenile delinquency, we're talking about misbehaviors of children or minors, right? And next time when you look at child protection, we shall look at this. What is it? When we talk about child delinquency, whatever it is, and so forth, and also see how you can manage those. All those things also for children who have maladjusted behaviors also our subjects for counseling or something like that. For yeah, so that's what it is. So far, so good. And so these are some of the objectives that we have. So number 1 is that one where you're trying to look at an individual, analyze an individual's behavior, and if you think that it is maladjusted, then you try to bring that individual to normal functioning by way of the behavior of that particular individual. And also issues of, I mentioned about issues of growth, development and personality. All these things are looking at the same issues that we're talking about issues of self-awareness, for example. All of these also come along. And also, it helps you to understand the mental and emotional condition of an individual. What is it? Is an emotional situation of an individual a mental health issue? No or yes? The emotions of an individual, can they be signs of an individual's mental health issue? It's possible, right? But if it's just an emotion, it would be temporary at that particular time, right? Or it could be otherwise. So this is how you would be looking at that. So the actual objective would be to look at those, diagnose, understand, and also see how you can intervene to bring about that normal functioning of an individual. For example, issues of anxiety, stress, depression, right? How do you look at those things, right? Gilbert, any one of these, anxiety or stress? Okay. Situational anxiety or situational stress? Yes. Okay, we'll talk later. And issues of interpersonal relations is important. You remember last time we talked about self-harm? That we said an individual can actually harm himself. It's possible? Yeah. So things like those. Suicidal thoughts, for example. Those are self-harm designed activities or motives by an individual. Why would you decide to kill yourself, for example? Why would you decide to kill yourself? You know, this is, I remember one preacher asking people around, ndani angafuna kumwalira baba, amena angafuna ifa bandani, nobody raised his hand. Right? And he said, but you all are Christians and trust in Jesus Christ, who died for you. Why can't you die for him? So everybody was quiet. You can't? Yeah, ask those the prophetesses and the prophets. Why don't you die for him? You're just bothering us around. What are they going to do? They cannot. So these are some of the issues that you start looking into. Please don't start searching into the minds of your prophets and the holy men here. You start misunderstanding them quite a lot, right? Whether they are normal or abnormal. I've seen some clips somewhere where a prophetess in Zambia was preaching and he says he has pictures. He went to heaven and has come back, right? And the pictures of the angels and also, yes, right first. And he says he had lunch with Adam. Right? Now I was telling people, next week I'll show you, anybody who wants these pictures should pay. So what is happening to that? It's working on the psyche of the people, right? And people are going to pay to see. And you go and jumble something somewhere and send them. Say, this is Adam. And because you can't prove, there's no evidence how Adam looked. Who has ever seen a picture of Adam? Isabel, have you ever seen a picture of Jesus? Yeah. So what we have is just imaginations and creations and something like that. You see? It's quite interesting. Much more interesting because I actually spent 4-5 weeks in Israel. I never saw a picture of Jesus. That's one thing. So I said, this is where Jesus was born and grew up and died. There must be a photograph here. It's not there. There are no what? So, but what is that we see? Yeah. Imagination. Yeah, so, all right. So, that's fine. I don't want to go into those things around. But, okay, so there are no photographs that time. Yeah, so this is how we look at this. I think there's also the issue I'm talking about of self-awareness and also the issues of emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is a situation where an individual is able to, actually emotional regulation is premised on one principle. What is emotional regulation? Somebody is missing today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Eh? Who's missing?
Victoria.
Victoria never misses. Eh? No, she's just trying to add statistics, but she's not. But so it's only Victoria. Who else? Okay. Huh? I know you are here. Oh, Jennifer Dembo, where is she? Where is she?
She's doing online right now.
Huh? She's doing online.
Yeah, she's an nursery, but she will join us later.
Okay.
I think next semester.
Well, Artist Taonga is here. We have seen you, so don't worry. Okay, so we're talking about issues of emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is premised on one thing. One is premised on issues of what we call thought processes, right? On your thought processes. And last time when we were meeting here, I mentioned that these come into two, right? Positive and negative. And all these have their own characteristics. And they manifest themselves in different ways. That you must know. I can't go back to this. I think we already covered this, eh? Sure. True? False? Okay. Now, your emotional regulation will be dependent on your thought processes, whether they are positive or they are negative. And an emotion, you know what it is, we covered those, is your reaction to a happening, to an action, to an occurrence. That's your emotion, is how you react to what has happened to you at that particular time. And that will generate what I called the impulses, if you remember very well. Now, these impulses are the drivers that will determine whether or not your thinking will be positive or will be negative. That's what it is. Now, here, an impulse generates an emotion. You're clear on that one, right? The drive behind your action or your occurrence will generate an emotion. And I said an emotion is how you react, right, to what has happened to you. And this is one which now will be determined by your process, thought processes. It will be positive or it will be negative. So, when we talk about emotional regulation, we're talking about how you can manage specifically your negatives. Because negatives, if you go back to our last lesson, will show you the manifestations of that negative thought, right? What they are and how bad they are to an individual. Your individual, your self-awareness goes, your esteem goes, all sorts of things go away from you. And that is becomes a disorder, right? So if you have to avoid that disorder as an individual, then you must rather develop that ability to regulate your own emotions, control your emotions, right? Something happens to you and all of a sudden, it's very interesting. They just thought somebody has died. Where do they come from? Why can't you move over njala kuyamba kulira? Why? But you have seen people do that, right? Namalira kandi njala. Why do they do that? Is it an emotion? What is it? The child akandi njala kulira. What would that be?
An emotion.
It's an emotion, yes. Except that that child is not able to communicate that emotion to somebody who is mature enough or an adult who can address that issue that has affected that particular child around. So you can see how these things work around, right? Yeah, things like those. Let's assume whether John is your boyfriend or not, just says, basi ndakusia, chifukwa, basi wandiboa. Can you cry? Huh? You do what? I don't, oh, what? Mama, right? Yes, that is also an emotion, right? Kumenya kuja, you have failed to regulate your emotion. Anger, right? Anger is an emotion, right? Is anger good or bad emotion? Do you have bad and good emotions?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is how you understand that, you know. So see, quite interesting. All right, let's move on to look at what do we, that which we call psychosocial intervention. It's an area where you find yourselves actually, everybody will talk about that thing even without understanding what it is. You get a lot of people talking about that without actually understanding what it's supposed to be. Getting a social worker talk about psychosocial is you talk to somebody from nowhere, does it? Psychosocial. What is it? Yeah, Tandiana pa, tumapanga now psychosocial. I've met several people talk about this. Yes. You go there, just go there, ask one of the caregivers down there. Maybe some of them have done training here, you see. They'll say, but which is psychosocial? Say, what is psychosocial? Maybe with that lady who cleans there, she has heard about this. I was psychosocial. See you. Of course, to look different, kwanza wakafika ku village kumena makara. Yes, psychosocial. What is it anyway? Psychosocial interventions are just strategies that help us deal with an individual with a problem. That is all. Psychosocial approaches or interventions are strategies that we use to help an individual with a problem, where we look at those issues around that particular individual, the psychological factors in that particular individual, and the environment in which that individual is. And when we say psychological factors, they're quite plenty, right? You remember when we started, we looked at psychology, what it is, definitions, branches, and all sorts of things. One of those branches was the counseling psychology, right? And we have clinical psychology, we have so many of these things around. Now, when we look at an individual's problem from that angle, we assume that an individual does not exist in a vacuum. An individual exists in an environment. And we're pretty sure that in that particular environment, an individual may be affected by that environment, either way, positively or negatively. So this is how we look at it. So find that when we talk about psychosocial intervention, we are looking at how we analyze the factors that are around a particular individual, and also how those factors can affect an individual's mental well-being. That's all. Is it possible for an individual or an individual's mental wellness to be affected by the environment? Let's assume if they take you today, right, put you in a mental hospital, will you become a mental health or a psychiatric case, whatever it is? If we put you in a mental hospital, right, for some period of time, can you also have can you develop mental disorder?
Yes.
Well, you think so?
Yes.
So the environment. That's why people say, "Muntu ogwira kumisala makanga tiwa misala." So And I hope those people who work mortuary, so I don't know what happens to them. They behave like dead people. They don't care. Huh? Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
All psychosocial intervention at the end of the sentence, we say those of the environment in which the individual is life.
Where is that? I can't see it.
The definition of psychosocial
The bullet number 1. Which bullet? Number which?
number 1.
Okay, let me see. Okay. And if you have a problem by examining combined elements of psychological factors and those of the environment in which the individual lives.